All right, everybody, let's have a look at Adobe's Substance 3D Painter. So I've been using this for a little while, and it keeps changing on me, and it's crazy. Anyways, let me just start from the beginning. Thank you for coming and checking this out. So real quick, you may notice my layout is slightly different. This is just the way I like to work it. So what I've done here is I've moved my properties panel from beneath my layers panel and moved it over to the side. And I have brought my assets panel down below here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to texture a six-sided die, or from here on known as a D6. Now we're going to show some techniques here on this D6 that normally would not be used in a video game. These would be considered excessive for something as basic as a six-sided die, but it's an excellent, easy way to demonstrate how these techniques work. So with that, let's get started with texturing our six-sided die. So first we're going to start with going over to File. Now, normally we would expect to find some kind of import, such as import resource. That would be wrong here. Substance Painter actually can't do anything without a 3D model. It can't even do 3D models. So every new project assumes an import. With that, we will have this import window here, or new project window, and some options to select. One of the things we can select here is a template for what kind of texture map settings we want to use. Some of you may be interested in using the Unity HDR render pipeline. That would be fine. If you're heading into Unreal Engine, this one would also work fine. A standard one would be this ASM PBR metallic roughness is a decent one. All of these have their use cases. For our purpose, not even for our purpose, for my purpose, you can choose to follow me along on this trip and do your own variation of what I'm doing specifically, or you can feel free to find your own path if you like. For instance, you could select no template at all. That would be absolutely fine. And then we can make some adjustments later. I'm going to do that on purpose here. So I can show you how to change your mind later. Next, we're going to choose the file. So this would be the import itself. And when I click on select, I will have my dice here. So you'll notice that we have a low poly D6 and a high poly D6. We are going to bring in the low poly D6. All right, there we go. We're going to go ahead and use this texture in 4K. Again, probably under normal circumstances, this may only be a 10K texture. Sorry, not 10K. What am I saying? We're not even in 10K yet. A 1080 texture. And grab a sip of something here. Yeah, you might only use a 1024. You could go 2K or 4K. It's really kind of up to you. Again, we're going to go with the 4K texture. Not realistic for a D6. Unless this D6 was like the planet that the game took place on. I don't know. But for the sake of the demonstration, we're going to go with a 4K texture. And we're also going to keep this as an OpenGL. Now, if I remember correctly, then one of the main differences between DirectX and the OpenGL is it could be either the normal or the world space normal. One of the texture maps are reversed from the other, but it really isn't the end of the world. In this case, since we're creating it from scratch, it doesn't really matter. If we were importing a material from an external source or a third-party website, then it might matter. And a lot of those materials, even when you import them, might even have two options, a DirectX or an OpenGL for the normal or whichever map it was. I forget. And the rest of these options we'll just leave alone, and we'll click OK, which will bring in our low poly version of our D6. Now, this is very, very basic geometry here. You can see we've got some beveled edges, a cut-off corner. The model was made by Michael in a previous video, so anyone who wants to go check that out, you still can. And over here we have the UVs. Now, with the F keys, I can switch between a simple full 3D view. I could just work in the UV mode with F3, or go back to F1, which will bring me to here, or you can also just change that up here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to click F2 and work in this window for now. Okay, so if we have a look around our asset and make sure that it imported properly and everything and it looks good. Now, allow me to demonstrate something here. So I'm going to delete this first layer. It always comes in with an automatic paint layer. Actually, if I put that back, you'll see now with the brush, select brush, sorry, wrong brush. I select the layer and select brush. I can now just draw straight onto this guy. Okay, cool, right? No big deal. We can just draw on there. Now, I'll delete that layer. And I want to show you smart materials. So that's this second tab here. So we got basic materials. Why don't we have a look at basic materials first? These are just standard materials. For instance, we have a leather reptile skin, so I can throw this on here. And our D6 will load up any moment. A leather reptile skin? No, it did not. How about this organic flesh? I know that one will work. Whoops. There we go. Am I experiencing some slowdown here? What's going on? Let's add a fill layer and try that again. That shouldn't have mattered. Yeah, that's what I thought. There we go. Okay, that was strange. I was just experiencing some slowdown. So we can apply a material like this, and you'll see that like we get some very meaty looking dice action. And if we go back and show you the UV, you'll see very clearly where all of those seams take place on this UV map, which is fine. Okay. So cool. We got a meat die. That's fun. So let's delete these layers now. And allow me to show you, so these are just basic materials. Allow me to show you some smart materials. So smart materials are a collection of materials working together to create massive depth. So for instance, this machinery material, you can see from the example, there's a lot of dirt and rust inside of the crevices. And there's the yellow, you can see on the yellow, we got a lot of shine from some sunlight. So if I apply that, we would expect to see that exact result, but we don't. So what we get instead is just this mustard colored dye, which isn't very fun at all. And the reason for that is we have yet to bake a texture map. So if we go over to the texture set settings and scroll down, we'll see we have a bake mesh maps option. Okay. And if we click inside of there, we will see, actually, let me go back to the painting mode real quick. And if we look here, we can see that underneath it's asking, it's begging us for some texture information here, like curvature maps and thickness and normal maps, right? It's saying select one, select one, select one. It doesn't have one. If you already had these maps somewhere, you could import them in, I guess, if you want. But since this is a custom asset that we're making here, we're going to bake our own maps. So we'll click on Bake Mesh Maps. And you'll see here we've got a standard surface material that came in from Maya with Mike's low poly D6. And because we imported it at 4K, there it is at 4K. And down here we got our mesh map bakers. So these are going to be all of the mesh maps that we are going to bake into our model right now. So with this, I think normally we could probably do without ID, but for the sake, I'll just leave it on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bake an opacity map as well. Okay? So this is just me. You don't need to do this. I'm going to do this. So here we go. We're going to do an opacity map with it as well. We get output size of 4K. And over here, so we can change this here too if we want. We should be able to get as high as 8K. You don't want to go to 8K. Baking takes time. Everyone's computer will vary. At 4K, mine will take like 30 to 45 seconds, maybe 60 seconds. Yes, in any case, carrying on from there, we'll see here we get a high poly parameter section. So this is a great technique to get a whole lot of height information and detail for your 3D models while budgeting for polygon counts in your games. So for instance, if I were to count all of the polygons on Mike's D6, we're going to have 6, 12, so like around 18 plus 8, so 26 polygons perhaps, I think. That was some rough math. I don't know if that number's right. But the high poly version is going to have a couple thousand polygons on it. Now, we're not going to be using those polygons. We're just going to use the height information from those polygons to fake some depth onto this 6-sided die. So let's go ahead and click onto this little piece of paper here next to that big empty void, and it'll bring up a menu where we will grab the high poly of the D6. And once we do that, we're going to see the two meshes squeeze together and try to coexist. We can very clearly see the depth detail that Mike has added to the high poly with the numbers. So this is the number 5. Over here we've got a 6. Okay. 4, there's the 1. All right. So the red sections are sections of the high poly that are protruding beyond the low poly. And the blue sections are the part of the high poly that are below the low poly mesh. We can play with these distances with the frontal distance and the rear distance. So if I want to increase the size of the low poly to get the high poly all the way inside, I could do that. Or I can shrink it down to get it more on the outside. But generally, so then this one here we can play with the high poly, but it's really not going to move much. Generally, if you're going to play with these, I would almost recommend just leave them alone. But if you do play with these, you want to make small adjustments. You don't really want to be like, that looks good. Like, you really don't want to do that. So make small adjustments, okay? And then in anti-aliasing, I'm going to go ahead and add a 4x. I could probably go higher, but again, it's just a D6, right? So this is not, again, a normal use case for something like a 6-sided die. We're doing this to demonstrate the technique, and a die is a very simple model to model and to texture, okay? This technique would be best applied for hero assets. So a hero asset would be something that you've already modeled up to like close to 5,000 polygons. Let's say like a rifle in a player's hand, something they're going to look at a lot. And you would like to get a lot more detail added to that model without going over your polygon budget. So you could make a high poly version of that rifle and bake it to the low poly version to really create the illusion of great depth. For instance, you may decide you want to model the texture into the grip so that you get nice deep lines in the grip of a gun. That's great. You can do that on the high poly, come in here and bake it, and no one will ever know that it's just a flat texture. So with that, we got our 4K texture, our high poly applied, our maps selected. I've added some 4x that we're sampling. We're going to bake the selected textures. So now you're going to see my computer begin the bake process. There's a green progress bar going on at the bottom. You're seeing all the different layers of the maps getting assembled. You can see them here under the mesh map bakers. Come in and you can see which ones we're actively working on. So the ambient occlusion, here comes the curvature, and now we're working on position, and we are on thickness and opacity, and we're finished. So the bake is complete. We'll return to paint mode, and what we should get is a result like this. So ignore the fact that the bake wasn't fantastic. That's okay. We can bake all we want. Instead, for now, just pay attention to the fact that our smart material is now working. We can now see all kinds of dust, rust, and damage on the surface of the die. Why? Because we now have textures to play with. Okay? Now, we can go back if we want, and we can rebake. We can do this all day if we like. And what we're going to do now is we are going to go ahead and get all of the red, or as much of it as we can, gone. So this way, we won't get any more of that weird artifacting we had along our bevels and stuff. And we will bake again. So you can bake at any time. You can bake as much as you like. And it won't wreck or harm your active texture. Okay? So with that, we'll just let this bake take place. Again, I haven't timed it, but I don't even think it was 30 seconds last time. We're on the curvature maps now. Pay attention to the way these maps are baking too, and you'll understand a little bit more on how they work. And we are all done. So return to paint mode, and our results should be much nicer now. You can see that we got those protrusions gone, and when I zoom out, we still have an illusion of depth in these numbers when there is, in fact, none at all. Okay? But when we zoom out, it looks like we do, right? So this is not really, rusted machinery dye. I mean, you can do whatever color you guys want. Have fun with this. Feel free to do a bloody, meaty dye. I think that's funny and pretty cool. But I'm going to go for something a little bit more realistic, perhaps. Now, my knowledge of the software is one thing, artistic ability is another thing. I don't have a lot of it. I got a little bit of it, and I'm going to pretty much use all of it to my best of my ability right now to demonstrate this. So, here we've got a D6. Now, I've always liked those red, translucent, semi-transparent Vegas dice. If you've ever been to Vegas or to a casino, and they're slightly bigger and chunkier. They're really nice looking dice. But in order for me to be able to get some kind of transparency through this dice, I will first have to change my shader. Now I've baked an opacity map already, but over here on the right hand side, there's some shader settings. So I'm going to go ahead and choose on the shader settings. And inside of the shader settings, right here, we've got the ASM Metal Rough. Okay, so that's the default shader that was put on because I didn't choose one. So if I click on this, I'm going to be looking for the PBR Metal Rough with alpha blending. You can see here, for example, in the little example, maybe you can only quite see it a little bit, but trust me, it's got you can tell it's got some transparency to it. So I'm going to click on that. Okay, and then I can close that. So now that we've added changed our shader to include opacity, we're going to go into our texture set settings here, and we've got all of our channels here. So in our channels, you can see here, I'm just going to go ahead, I'll make this a little bit wider for you. Okay, you can see here in our channels, we've got a base color, a metallic, a roughness, a normal, and a height map. And you can see on the left-hand side of the properties, only because I've got this fill layer selected, that we have a base color, a metallic, a roughness, a normal, and a height. And we've added opacity, right? We have an opacity map that we've baked. So we need to add an opacity channel. So over here in channels, we have a little plus sign. We're going to click on the plus, and we're going to add an opacity channel. And now with the opacity channel added, you'll see here we've now got opacity as an option on the material that we can now turn on and we can play with down here. See, we can make our die start to get transparent. Okay, so now if we go back to the layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that fill layer. Now, I don't really need anything else other than, you know what, yeah. So on our fill layer, I'm going to go ahead and change that base color to a nice, deep red. Okay, Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some metallic to get some of that shiny reflection, right? See that? And then we are going to add a little bit of roughness. No, we're not. We're going to take some roughness out. Sorry. Like that. Okay. And then we're going to grab the opacity and we're going to lower it about half, I think. Maybe less than half. Let's do 0.75. I like round numbers. Yeah. That looks good. Allow me to show you what it looks like now. So I've got that semi-transparent, plasticky looking dye in there. Maybe a little bit too much metallic on that. Yeah. And maybe a little bit roughness back. That's looking good. All right. So right out, for the most of you, you're probably thinking, well, hey, that's pretty good. You know, you're there, right? No, we're not there yet. So what I want to do now is I've got the base color of my dye down. It's a semi-transparent looking plasticky dice. Cool. Or a dye. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go here and I'm going to click to add another fill layer. Okay. Now you'll notice right away with that fill layer that the layer before it has completely been taken over. Like we've lost the opacity and everything. And that's because it's above this layer here. So if we want this layer to come through at all, we'll need to apply what's called a mask. Now, masks work very much the same way here as they would in, say, Photoshop or Illustrator. And so in substance, anything that is white is visible, anything that's black is invisible. So if we add a black mask, then all of this white color is gone because the black has hidden it all because it's invisible. Okay. Now, if I wanted to paint on here, you'll see that I can bring that white color back. See that? Okay, and you can even see it on the mask here start to show up, the drawing that we made. See? So we can paint with the white color to bring the white color back. Okay? And there's a white mask that would do the exact opposite. So why did I add another fill layer? Well, I want to apply some damage to this because one thing I do know about texturing is that nothing is perfect. So if your dye looks perfect, then it's not realistic, right? Let's think about the daily wear and tear that dice go through, right? It's going to need scratches and all kinds of beating up damage and stuff. But even before that, we need to color in the numbers. So I'm going to click on this color here, and we're going to go ahead and select a black color. And I'm going to select the mask, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to add a paint layer to it. And in doing that, I can now paint, and the black will come through. Okay? So with holding Control and sliding my mouse left and right, I can make my brush bigger or smaller. You can see it here in the preview. Okay? I'm going to press F3 to go to UV mode. And while holding Control, I can make this the size of these indentations that Mike has modeled in. Okay? Now, look at my brush. It has two lines. There's an outside dotted line, and there's an inside line. So if I'm just going to click here, and if you see, what that's done is that's the level of fade. If I keep clicking, it gets a little bit more dramatic, but the fade will never go, it stays almost 50% between that inside line and the outside line, right? So I'm just going to take all that fade back. Okay. But that's okay. We've got all kinds of brush options here. So first of all, the size. Well, the size, I'm pretty happy with the size for now. And what I'm going to do here is we're going to adjust. Well, we could adjust the flow, but you can see the flow, the way the flow works is that the outside edges of the, here, I'll make the brush smaller so you can see. The outside edges get more feathered and the inside stays pretty bold, right? So we're just going to leave that alone. Then there's the opacity of the stroke, which we don't really want to mess with. But if I go down here, you'll see an alpha. And an alpha is not much different than a mask. It's white is visible, black is invisible. So in my alpha, it's got a built-in feather. So I should be able to go into this alpha here, and we'll see a parameter of hardness. And if I adjust this parameter of hardness, I can make that a solid, hard circle. See that? So now, so my brush size has been changed again, so I'll change it back. I now have no more inside line, right? Which means now if I stamp, boom, it's just all black. Okay? Now, the other thing I want to do here is I want to scroll down. We're going to go to this paint layer here. Sorry. So if I paint that, if I go over back to this, and let's switch back to 3D mode, and we'll see that that's a nice black dot in there. But we can help this thing out a little bit by giving it some more depth as well. So we can go here into the height, and we can pop it out if we want, or we can sink it in a little bit, which will help a little bit. Okay. I'm also going to raise the roughness of that all the way up and the metallic all the way down, because I don't want that dot to have any gloss of any kind. Now I'm just wondering here, I'm going to go back to the UV mode, and we're going to click back on our paint layer, and I'm thinking that I should make the brush maybe this size instead. I'm not really sure. No, that looks weird. Yeah, that definitely looks weird. With that, I am going to make my brush the full size of this and start making my rounds. And we're just going to stamp all the numbers in. Just like that. Done. And we can go back to 3D mode and have a look at our die. So we can see the numbers straight through. It's starting to come along pretty good, right? So we've got the basics of the die now. We've got the colored dots. We've got the red translucent color going on. Again, it is not expected for you to follow my exact color scheme. Have fun with it. They're your dice. Make your own colors. Make multiple. That's fine. So, next step. We've basically finished coloring a perfect die. We need a little bit more action on here, right? So what we're going to do here is we need now to make this thing a little bit less perfect. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to add another fill layer. Okay? And then, of course, we're going to right-click and add a black mask. All right? And now we're going to go over to Smart Masks. And if we look in Smart Masks, we should be able to find something that's scratched up. So we've got some subtle scratches here. We've got some stain scratches, paint subtle scratches. We got some edge strong scratches, and edge scratched. I'm going to go ahead and add this smart mask edge scratch to my mask. And this will show you exactly what it looks like. So you can see here we've got some strong scratches around the edges, as well as in the corners here. Okay, and you can see it added all kinds of fun information here. And if we click on these, we'll have all kinds of stuff in the parameters that we can set up. So this is called a generator, and it's the metal edge wear. And we should be able to play with and adjust some of these settings. Like we can change the grunge amount to make it a little bit less blah. I mean, it seems unrealistic at this stage that this would be so extra, right? But it's okay. We can play with these things, right? Okay, there's the wear level here. We can just lower that. And it's starting to look a little bit better. See that? Okay. Oh, there we go. All right. Looks good. We got some hard corner wear, right? I might be a little extreme on my wear, but it's okay. We got some wear around where the maybe we'll go a little bit less. We got some wear around where the numbers are, some wear on the corners. No, that was too little. There we go. Okay, we got some wear everywhere you would expect to see wear on a die. Okay. All right. But now let's have a little bit more fun. Let's get more purposeful with our damage layer here. So let's go ahead and add a paint layer this time. So now with the paint layer, we get the use of an alpha shape. Okay, so let's go check out some alphas, which are these ones. Now, inside of these alphas here, we've got all kinds of fun little alphas that we can apply, including, but not limited to, fingerprints. So we can grab a fingerprint alpha. Oh, hang on. We got an autosave happening. We can add a fingerprint alpha over to that. And let's press F1 so we can get our UVs back. Okay, and we can go over here. Now, we've got some settings here. So let's go first and change the spacing of this so that we can just get one finger. And we're going to increase the brush size to get that fingerprint. And I'm going to imagine a die and how big a fingerprint would look on it. Right? Okay, I'm going to rotate this fingerprint around a little bit, and we'll just apply a fingerprint. Cool. So we got a fingerprint on that die. Stands to reason, we'd probably have another fingerprint somewhere. Maybe up here. There we go. Okay, so we got some fingerprints added. What else would we have? We can add another paint layer if we want. And let's go ahead and add some more scratches. So we could just search for scratches if we like. And there we go. There's some nice dramatic scratches, and we can add that to the alpha. And now we can go in here and scale these, and we can go ahead and add some scratches to them. Now, if I was real smart about this with the scratches, because when this plastic scratches, it doesn't actually change color. It would stay red. So actually, I should go back to this fill layer that I did here. Let's go grab this red. So we'll grab the scratch layer that we did. We'll grab the color, and we'll grab our little eyedropper here, and we'll grab the same red. So now you can see we still got the damage in the dust without all of that dramatic white, right? And I'm going to do the same thing with that fingerprint. Well, I guess that fingerprint's kind of committed. Because when you do a paint layer, it's kind of, can't really change it. So if I go here now and change the color to red or whatever, the fingerprint doesn't change. But that's okay. We can put it back. So we'll just delete that. And I'm going to grab this layer instead. And we're going to grab this color, which looks like it was already on there. And with that color, I'm going to make it a little brighter to make it slightly different. And now with the scratches, I can go in and paint some scratches that will look like just standard everyday damage. One of these shortcuts will rotate. Just can't remember. There we go. Control up and down will rotate for me so that I can add more scratches. We can add some scratches to the corners like this and over there. We can add them anywhere we like. So it might be time to retire this die here. Okay. Now we can go have a look. We got some nice scratches on there. We got some dirt. We can go back to this layer if we like, and we can grab the generator, and we can go check. And now that we've changed that color, we can probably put some of that wear back to make it look even more grungy. See that? And there you go. So now if we wanted to add the fingerprint back and have it just be like a different shade of red, we'll just go to a paint layer again, and we will clear our search, and let's grab a finger. I like this fingerprint, and we'll just grab that fingerprint. Okay, and what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to grab that same color again, and this time I'm going to make it darker. All right, and then we'll just add a fingerprint here, and we'll add one here, and one there. Okay, and there you go. Dirty little hands playing poker or craps at our casino. All right, so now you can see here we've got a gently used D6. A little more than gently used, but it's looking pretty good. And we will see you guys in a bit in the next video when we import this D6 into Unity.